Have you ever been victimized by New Age spirituality?
We've been waiting for you. We've been waiting.
You're going to want to listen up.
I'm Megan, an intuitive life coach and Reiki master.
I'm Ryan, a professional astrologer, and we want to show you what spirituality is by talking about what it is not.
Con artist.
Yes.
Snake oil salesman.
There are so many susceptible people out there.
And then they're tainted. They're ruined. They don't want to come back to spirituality.
We still have a lot to learn, and we will humble ourselves and learn, I think, every freaking day. This is Clairannoyance,
a podcast of spiritual interference.
Megan, so were you always like a badass entrepreneur, or was like spirituality coming into the scene for you what made you be like, I'm gonna rock the business world?
I've always been a hustler. You know, like when I was in first grade, I like found plywood and I like painted it, and I would like try and sell it to my dad for $10, and I was like one of a kind.
Your own father. I love
yeah.
that.
So I've always been self-employed for the most part. When I got into spirituality, that was where we had this juxtaposition, because so many people were like, you should do it for free. You're a healer. You should do it for free. And it was like, that's great, but I've got to eat. Like,
oh my God.
So I would definitely, I'd say the entrepreneurial spirit came first, and then spirituality for me.
Love that spirit first.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, same. But I had like an opposite, I think, where like I wanted to, because in my learnings of astrology, a lot of people, or like ancient astrologers, would kind of like give readings to people just when you came to them, you know, and so they kind of like didn't accept payment, and it feels like a weird thing for me to accept money for. Like, it's not a normal, quote unquote normal, I know I hate that word, but like normal like business like model or industry,
or is it becoming a new sort of business model, which our next guest can help tell us about. And quite frankly, this is why we started this podcast, is getting into the nuances. So I'm super excited to talk to our next guest. What about you?
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm really, really excited. We have Jason Freeland from California Psychics, which is a powerhouse company that is honestly employing an insane amount of people in the spiritual space, spiritual service providers. And that is so necessary these days, because we got to make a living. But there's so many complexities to that, setting up a spiritual business. Like, how do you do this? Many of our listeners either are consumers of spiritual services or they're spiritual service providers. So very excited about this. Jason, hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. Ryan, Megan. I've kind of tried to put both of those names together.
You put us together.
I love that.
It's great to be here this morning, and it's a sunny day in Southern California, and excited to talk about all things related to California Psychics and the business of California Psychics.
So, yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, this is such an interesting, like, did you have a background in spirituality? How did you get into this land?
Well, 100% by accident. I have no background in spirituality. And I think our business, like I like to say, our business is not, I don't see it as spiritual as much as I see it as, we're problem solvers for people. Like, so, because I know we'll talk about this idea of spirituality and business. And it's like, I think, on some level, we're providing a service, we're a service business. But I went to school, I studied English, I went to film school, I dropped out of film school, I was driving a limo. And I had a friend who, with his dad, wanted to make an infomercial about psychics. And they came out to California, and I convinced them. I had a partner who subsequently retired, but we convinced them, hey, we can make this infomercial for you. And that was in the early 90s. And at that point, we just were like, I mean, he didn't have a lot of money and he also didn't know anybody in Los Angeles. So we just kind of went about the process of putting together this half-hour commercial. And I was a complete skeptic. I really, in terms of my creative point of view, was like, convince me this really works. And we had an opportunity to talk to some of the different psychics who were working with his service, which was called Psychic Friends. And we talked to the psychics, asking, why do people want to talk to you? Asking the customers, what did you get out of it? There were these guys who had talked to a psychic and gone fishing, and the psychic had told them where they were going to find fish.
I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. That's all if you that's a hell of it. If you that would be a hell of a endorsement right here, because people fish all day. You get a good old boy and tell them where a fishing spot is or a general location, or that's hilarious.
Yeah. And so, there was a guy who had won the lottery, and there was a guy who, like, the psychic told him he was like, he was hated his job and like where to go look for work. And there was a person who had found love in the vegetable aisle in the supermarket. And so we these were the real stories. There was a woman who like had thrown away her engagement ring, like these stories, we just kind of like found the stories and just kind of told the stories. And, and that really, really resonated for them. And I really didn't want to be in this business at all. I was trying to make films. The guy who was running that business, who was very, very successful. I mean, he didn't think it was going to be like, they had made an infomercial before, and they basically said, when you make the second infomercial, it usually will be less successful, right? So you're going to make, whatever you're selling, that then you make version two. Version two is kind of not as good, and so it was like 10 times as successful. And so wow. I was making some money, and all I wanted to do is make a movie. So he agreed to finance this film, and then. Right when we were about to open the production office, it was a road picture in Arizona, and we like had the cast and everything. He pulled the plug on it, and he basically said, if you make this movie, then you're gonna get successful, and then you're not gonna, you're not gonna be able to do make my commercials and all this stuff. And he didn't really understand the film business, really how hard it is. But in any case, that was it. I'm like, I'm not going to work for this guy, and my partner. At the time, like he was able to find a way to like start building a business, and and I kind of went along with it. I didn't really understand the business in the sense that I wasn't the customer, right? But I really saw that there was a customer, and that you needed to treat that customer with integrity.
I think the integrity piece is so important there were so many interesting things that you touched on, but the integrity piece, first and foremost. You saw a need, in the market, you fulfilled it. Did you ever get a reading yourself, or were you just listening to testimonials?
In the very beginning, I when I saw myself as just like kind of the person making the commercials, it wasn't important to me. Now, later on, as I started my own business, it was really important to really understand, and then also kind of like understand, which is a really tricky thing. And I don't even know that I understand it today. Like, what is it that customers want from the advisors? So, you really, until you do a reading and really kind of get in there and start to have a reading. Now, today, I don't do readings because I don't, with our psychics, because I don't believe that, I can be honest. I think you have to bring an openness, and it's hard for me to do that because then they are like, oh, okay, well, you're this guy. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't really anymore get readings with our advisors. But I did in the beginning.
Gotcha.
That makes sense. Do you feel like, I think this is so interesting that you didn't have a background in spirituality, but it makes sense. Like I really think that makes sense. I think that's just kind of like the mark of a really good entrepreneur. And person in business in general, is just that identifying of the need in a market. Do you feel like now that you've got this fully fledged business, what, actually, before we even go into like the difference between a spiritual business and like a normal business, and is there a difference and weird benefits, I guess, or challenges? Will you explain I guess what is California Psychics for all our listeners who don't even know?
Yeah, sure. So we started out as, when I started in business, even working and doing these infomercials and working for Psychic Friends. And, at that point, there was Psychic Friends, there was Miss Cleo, there was LaToya Jackson had there was,
I forgot about her.
Yeah,
too.
Sylvester Stallone's mom, Jackie Stallone. There were commercials where Jackie Stallone had a psychic network.
Oh my God.
And Sly's brother, I can't remember the name of Frank.
In the 90s were wild.
Yeah,
I just remember Miss.
Yeah, so it was you had that, you had Gary Spivey and Reality Bites, the movie with Ben Stiller and Winona Ryder. There's kind of a little subplot in there where she's calling these psychics on TV over and over again, trying to get in touch with the same psychic. And so that was the world. And it worked. You called a 900 number and then you would talk by the minute and then it would get billed to your phone. So, you, at the end of the month, you get your phone bill, you have your long distance. It's kind of crazy to think now that we used to pay for each long distance phone call. But you would then have, hey, okay, here's all your psychic calls, or that was how you got the weather. I mean, this is all pre-internet. If I wanted to know the weather, right now, it's hard to imagine. There's no internet. I called a 900 number and I could get the weather report for the next day because I didn't have the newspaper. That was the world. We operated in that world. It was very expensive to use a 900 number. So AT&T, MCI, which I don't think they exist anymore, but
I haven't thought of MCI in so long.
Yeah, well, this is how this whole thing started. So they were charging a lot of money to put it on the phone bill, right? And we started to experiment with credit cards. Hey, why not just pay with a credit card? And so, and all of the things that we did along the way were just thinking about that customer. I mean, Winona Ryder wants to get back in touch with the same psychic in that movie. And it's that was a really big insight for us, is that people want to call and talk to the same person again. How do we make that happen? And
what I think you've done incredibly, based on what you're saying, is you've been able to move with the time, just how you identified the need of your customer. You were then able to move with the times, which so many businesses don't, so I think that's incredible insight to not only identify a need, but then see where life is going and match that and keep up. So the duration, I mean, how long has California Psychics been around?
Well, we started, so I was doing this a little bit before, but we started in 1995. That's when that guy did not want to make our movie. And we went out and started our, started our own business in 1995. And, but look, it's interesting that you say that, because I think that you're constantly too far behind or too far forward. I for a long time, was resistant to doing chats, people chat with the psychic. And I was for a long time, well, it just, how are you getting, how is that the same as a phone call, right?
Mm-hmm.
People, I mean, in a phone call, I can, there's clear audience, I can pick up on your voice. There's so much that comes through from the voice. And, you're going to tell me that you can do that same thing with a chat. And chat is, I mean, voice is incredibly, if I call and talk to my wife and she knows what's wrong, what's going on, there's so much information in voice, right? And so I'm how is this chat thing going to be as cost effective, right, for the customer, as powerful, et cetera? But, hey, we do chat now, and 30% of our new customers, want to start with a chat, because I think, as I continue to not understand, I think, there's a safety and an even further feeling of anonymity, from chatting.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can potentially, through that channel, really give you my truth, right? Because I feel so safe, because you can't see me, you can't hear me. And so, but I mean, I was way behind on that. We were way behind on apps. So it's I think you're constantly failing in that, but you got to realize that like people are changing and people are your customers.
Yeah, and communication styles. That's so, yeah, because talking on the phone now, I mean, I think part of like a lot of people's social anxiety was having to call someone's house, talk to their parents.
Truly. It still is. People hate like getting on the phone with someone you don't know. Like it's so weird for people.
Oh, I have to
So
practice.
interesting.
Even if I'm like ordering food, I have to rehearse it. I've hung up a few times.
Oh my God, really? I've never.
When anxiety was high.
It's so That's so funny. That's so funny. Well, Gemini, I guess. Like, I don't know. I don't have that communication issue.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I feel like there kind of isn't a difference between like operating a spiritual business versus like any other type of business, which I know you say you don't necessarily consider it a spiritual business, but it is, like at least the service that you're giving people is like as we're going to discuss, like there's so much lack of accountability and regulation in spiritual work of any kind. Does that play into your business, like, and how you are able to conduct business? Do you have any weird like
model hiring? I mean, there's so many different aspects and ways this could go.
A lot of these businesses went out of business because they were doing kind of unscrupulous things, right? Like, so they weren't running sound businesses, and that kind of I saw that firsthand. So for me, I think, you run it as a business, and I really want people everyone who works for us, I mean, to not take any kind of moral or ethical risk in what they're doing.
I love that you keep the bottom line keeps coming back to integrity, because I think that psychic, like 900 hotlines, that was the first thing. It was like keep the customer on the phone as long as possible, no matter what. And the fact that you're the CEO is saying like, when it's done, it's done. I want a happy returning customer. And we checked out your reviews, like, so the Google reviews, where we could, and quite frankly, there were not like really great reviews. Like there were not, there was not a lot of negative commentary. You're always going to have that one or two, or, a few people who are not happy, especially when you have a business the size that you do. But to run a business like this, and it's really up for interpretation. How I feel after an interaction with one of your employees, I mean, I can really take it to the internet, talk a lot of smack. There's not smack talking about California. I mean, I think that's amazing.
Well, look, one thing it's interesting, like we don't have, and we tell our customers, we don't have negative reviews on our site. And like we go through this, we've gone through this cycle over and over and over again. And, one of the things was like, when we had built it all, we were about to launch like the ability to kind of put a negative review. And, the psychics, when we tested it, the psychics hated it. They're like, look, this is a negative review of me.
Yeah.
And, and so like, and first of all, I think on some of our competitor sites, I question like kind of, I think everyone kind of like you said, hey, you went to Google or Trustpilot, you went outside of our walls and saw what people wrote about us. And I think, 100%, whatever's out there, that's unfiltered. But, and I think people should have the ability to go look outside of, the product. But like when we looked at it, we're like, hey, Apple doesn't have negative reviews of their products. Like they're not like, this is, they're not going, okay, like this iPhone sucks. And, but we share those negative reviews. We look at all the negative reviews, right? So if you write in and you say, hey, I hate this reading or blah, 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 we look at it and we share it with the advisor. Like, so they see it because it's about integrity. It's, and we tell people when they submit a negative review, we tell them what we're going to do with it. And people complain. They're like, this is, bull. And why the hell are you doing it this way? But
I'm telling you that, like, thank you for your review. We're going to contact the practitioner, but we're not going to post it on our site. I think people forget, like, at the end of the day, you're in this to make some money, though. Like
Well,
it's to
yeah.
be a
I mean, for
profitable business.
me, for us as an organization, like it's in our best interest to post a negative review. But look, we're trying to keep the best advisors connected to California psychics, and we, ultimately we've got the customer and the advisor, and they're both our constituents, and we've got to try to balance both of their interests, as best we can. And we get complaints from both sides, right? Like the advisors are telling us, we'll make a change that favors the customer, that customers like, advisors don't like, but you're just trying to balance it, right?
How do you know, like someone wants to be a psychic or be a tarot reader or become an astrologer, because you have a variety of services that you offer. So what is that process of onboarding to be like, yes, you are a psychic, or like, girl, no.
Yeah. You are a qualified astrologer.
Yeah. So how does that, because I mean, you can go on the website at any time. And when we checked it out last week, it was like there were 50 psychics like ready, waiting.
It's like 100.
There were.
I was like, like a massive menu.
Well, the thing is, I'll tell you, that continues to change. And we're even in the conversation today about how we do it. So typically we want to do 2 readings we have people who now it used to be in-house, the evaluators. So it used to be that they were, the evaluators were working in-house, and you get so burnt out. It's like being a movie reviewer and just going to see, like, if you go see, you mostly are going to bad movies, right? So you're mostly, if you're evaluating psychics, you're mostly getting bad psychic readings. And at some point, like, you're just burnt out. So
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. It's just like, ugh. But what we do is, we look at these evaluations, we have some questions, and then, if we feel like they're, and they filled out all their paperwork and we've done a background check, we've kind of gone through our process. We turn them on, and they take, they talk to customers, and then we just kind of watch the data to see, hey, how are they doing? I think it's hard. I mean, look, I think, and we're talking about this recently. It's like, some people hate, some people love this particular advisor, and other people internally in the company and customers hate them. So, you have this polarity, and so it's really hard to, like, everyone's not going to point to the same advisors and say they're great.
True. It is like very subjective in that sense. Everybody's got their favorite readers, like all over the place, for sure.
Well, it's also your personality too. So I can understand, going back to something we talked earlier, when it was like getting those reviews as a practitioner, like, it's not, when you are your product, it's like, well, now you got to kind of protect their ego to a degree, their feelings, so they're able to produce. So it's so interesting. Always comes back to integrity and human connection, and how can we improve?
Totally. I even think, like, it's kind of funny because, I mean, like, just as an astrologer, period, like, there are, like, accreditations you can get. There are plenty of astrologers you can go, like, study with, and they'll give you a certificate when you complete the program. But then there are also these, like, very serious tests that you can take, and, like, even a couple colleges technically that you can go to. But these are relatively new as far as the practice of astrology goes. These are still just, like, random humans that decided what these tests were. And the issue with a lot of these tests is, like, I'm a very proficient astrologer. I wouldn't pass those tests because they also want you to just know all these really arbitrary things that, like, no practicing astrologer is ever going to be using with a client, So, like, there are really serious issues with some of these ways of qualifying someone. So it's like, yeah, how would you... I can't even get the qualified astrologers to agree on, like, what is the qualification. So how would I expect a business person to be able to do it either? It's hard. So interesting. You have how many, I guess, people?
There's over 500. I think, the other thing that for us is you got to do it quick. So like, people are paying by the minute, and, you got to really produce results quickly. And so, there's people who are great, but their process maybe just takes longer, that they're not going to be successful, with our clients.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. That's really good.
And that segues into our next question is, how do you balance accessibility? Individual practitioners like Ryan and I, like, we set our price, And so I think this is an avenue where someone is like, okay, I can't afford a few $100s, but I can afford $20 or $30 or $4.99 a minute or whatever, so how does that come into play, if that makes sense?
As advisors get busier and are more in demand, their prices, go up. But we always are bringing in new advisors at $4 a minute. And so, which really, when I started in the business in the early 90s, that was the price. Like everyone was like it even went up to $5 a minute. So, when you think about, I always think about like, okay, well, what was I paying for coffee or gas in, 1992?
I was about to say, like, right, there was no price inflation.
Yeah. And, well, you're paying a lot less for coffee at that point. So I think, and we, even our best customers, so like even the customers who are talking to our best psychics, they're going down and like picking through all those $4 and $5 psychics and finding people who they think are of value. They're like, wow, like we got this person, they just came on, and they'll use those people. So I think there's opportunity at all price points. And it's just kind of how you want to use the product, what you're looking for, what you need.
Yeah, I think it's it's really, really interesting. And kind of even enticing. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like,
when we were checking it out, he was like, should I apply? Should I
do this?
Should I get on here?
Well, I have Ryan, we have another thing that we're in a closed beta on called Hypsy, which is HYPSEE, and it's a really interesting tool. So we're really, I've been for a long time trying to get our product to independence, because look, I think there's the universe of people wanting to talk to advisors and astrologers and like all kinds of advisors, tarot readers, is bigger than kind of the universe of people who want to talk to, say, our brand. Now, I think our product is really amazing, and it's really, we have it's not a subscription business, so you gotta wanna pay for it again, and so we have we've got to kind of continue to earn the customers' kind of trust and share of wallet, with every purchase. But I think a lot of people, they're like, I want somebody who was recommended by somebody else. And so what we've done is we've tried for a while to figure out how we could do this. And there was an entrepreneur who I started talking to last year, who had a company called Wisio, WISIO, and he was really focused on this creator influencer market. And he really felt like, there's people out there who have answers. You could be a kind of fitness. So he was into fitness, and but you could have parenting advice or tarot readers, astrologers. There's even people in doing cooking and stuff like that who you want information from. And so he came to us because he saw a lot of astrologers and tarot readers were on the platform. And so we've now taken a lot of those ideas, and we've put it into a new product called Hypsy, and we're really we're in beta right now.
That would be awesome, Ryan.
I'll look into
it.
Especially
you could maintain your independent,
Oh yeah.
So we do really see that as being an opportunity for people who don't want a product like ours, or for advisors who don't want to work with us.
I actually find the business model of working with you, I guess, very attractive, because it's like a big issue as an independent is having to run out and get your own clients all the time, like the constant self-promotion. And like there, it's like, well, this is this hub that is kind of just trusted, and then I don't know, prioritized if I'm online or not or whatever. So I like the, I guess, access to a client base that would provide, for sure. But you're also, I think, correct in that, like, even myself had such a negative view of things like this because I was conditioned by the Miss Cleo, like, of the world,
Yeah.
So what do you think that is? what do you think, like the Miss Cleo effect? So I'm going to call it, like what has done to this space. Do you think it's like kind of tainted the industry a little bit? It turned me off, and then now I'm, realizing like, well, that this is actually legit. Like I could see myself doing this.
I'm not sure that that's like really the kind of hangover on the industry, in the sense of, well, why hasn't the industry grown more, right? And it really grew a lot in the 90s, partially because I think there was really, look, I was right there. I made that first Psychic Friends infomercial, and we were at that point thinking that people were, well, can I get a really good reading, over the phone, right? Like that was really the big thing. Now here we are all working on Zoom and stuff like that. Can I actually do work and not be in the same room with another person? So at that point, it was like, hey, could I get a reading if person wasn't in front of, if I wasn't in front of the psychic? And it's funny, at that point, when I was in that business, I was still trying to make movies, and I had an office. I was in the same office with this producer, and he had told me this story. He had gone to a psychic, and he's like, this is crazy. I'm embarrassed to admit this. And the psychic asked him like, hey, he had a gold Rolex on. And she's like, give me the watch, because I really need to like understand your energy, and I'm going to help you. And she took the watch, and he, he went back, and she's like, I never had your watch. I don't know what you're talking about. And,
No.
yeah. And so I don't think Miss Cleo is the only challenge that like the industry has. I think it's much greater than that.
For sure. I think it was my first impression though. Like for me, I don't know. Like, and I guess I was just of that age where that was my first
it was like
impression.
it was on USA like late night. The infomercials came on, and so, but didn't she then go on to do some good later on for?
She did. Like, well, I forget exactly, but she like influenced some laws. Like she like kind of started doing some advocacy for the industry almost, right? I didn't follow super closely, but
yeah, neither did I. I just remember kind of briefly hearing about it when you could read a newspaper.
yeah, no, I saw something. She did something to like influence. I could totally be wrong on this, but I think it was something about the for entertainment purposes only, like tag phrase that you had to put on your websites or something, which was like such a joke. This was the original industry.
Like, are there any law? I mean, obviously there are business laws, and in spirituality, we really spiritual practitioners really govern ourselves. So, the integrity and ethical piece is obviously like super important to you and your company. But are there laws about, like, would it be considered fraud? I mean, I think that's what Miss Cleo went to jail for. Like, it was something.
Well, so there was in the case of Miss Cleo, she wasn't really a psychic. There was also a lot of confusion, like in the commercial, she's like picking up the phone and answering the
rotary
phone. You're not going to talk to, even if you call that number, you're not going to be talking to Miss Cleo. So we really tried to kind of not overpromise what we're delivering. I mean, our tagline is the joy of certainty, and that's really what we're focused on. In the beginning, when I was making these infomercials, like for Psychic Friends, it was like, hey, you're going to win the lottery. You're going to go find these fish that, you really want to catch and stuff like that. And so we don't, we're not really in the business, at least us, of over promising, although there's plenty of psychics out there who do.
Well, and then when you present it, it's like, well, it's entertainment only. So if you get your feelings hurt and then you spend some money, it's like, well, but it's entertainment only. So you can't come after me. But then it tarnishes the person from experiencing another practitioner in the spiritual field. So it's like, it's such an interesting landscape. I know.
It really is. Are there any ways that, we have to consider this an industry now? That was initially one of my questions was, do we consider this an industry? But it is. It's an industry. We live in a capitalist society. We kind of have to do this as a industry.
Well, I think like what you're doing is really helpful. And it's a slow advocacy process of just explaining kind of how it works. Right. And, I've talked to other people, we're so competitive, like the companies that I'm competing against, and like I'll talk to the people running them. I'm like, we should do kind of like you're never going to really grow the business until you grow the overall pie, and like we should work together, kind of to like educate people, not individually about a brand.
United Nations,
yeah,
of psychic networks.
But it's
create.
It's super. It's just you don't see that. People don't really want to do that. When you think about these things take like a generation to change people's mind. And I think so. To your point about Miss Cleo, that was a generation ago, right? So you're seeing new people come in with new perspectives on what this is all about. And I'm sure like your customers, there's a lot of younger people who are just really open to this, and have no preconceived notions.
Absolutely. I think like even the idea of Hipsy, like you said in beta, like that seems much more probably aligned with the customer base that I have. Yeah. I think that's another example of you guys kind of moving with the times as well.
Well, and also being able to collaborate. That just shows that, like, listen, I know what my company's about. We can help each other. It's interesting that you're trying to extend that invitation, but others are like, no. We're not interested in collaboration. That just alone speaks volumes.
Just, things change over time.
Yeah. A rising tide lifts all ships in my mind. I think you're pretty spot on. Do you feel like there's any specific ways, this is like a vice versa question, that like capitalism, government, these big institutions can better support this, what we do as a business? Like, is there anything they could do to change it, to make it better for us? Also, do you think there's anything spiritual practitioners? I know that I keep saying that, and I know that you don't refer to it as that, which smart, because you're right. We're fixing problems because people are asking about very specific problems that aren't about spirituality. Technically, I guess it's just more of a medium that they're going through. Anyway, do you think there's anything we can do to better almost like adjust to the systems that govern us, I guess? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And look, the reason why I don't talk about spirituality in the product is I don't really see that as the way to sell the product. So like, if I'm spirituality is not necessarily something that I think is like people pay for or ethically like we're charging for, right? Like, and you might get something spiritual from like, I might I could have a spiritual experience eating a meal at a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
That exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Like I could have an interaction with someone in like, it could be spiritual, and that can kind of come into any business. And so I really think, and I'm saying this like as how I see it, I think that that's not necessarily the best way to sell it. So and I think that people want, like, they want concrete value out of what you're doing, and so I think that's like, for me, what we're doing.
You're crushing that. Yeah, that's like incredibly convincing. It really is, because it makes me think. I think we use the spirituality as this catch-all term, and like separately, there's kind of like this issue with new age spirituality right now being like such a freaking farce, and like it's really annoying. But that it really, it's like that. I don't know. It is a kind of a catch-all term in a sense, but I think you're totally right. I don't think it's, and it's kind of my issue. I think at the core of it has been, like, I was always the spiritual person that was like, I don't want to charge too much. This doesn't feel like the type of thing you should charge somebody for. And if I think of it as that, right, like, well, it's a spiritual service, that then of course I'm not going to want to charge somebody for it, because you could have a spiritual experience eating your spaghetti, like, for sure. Like,
well, and to me, it's like people place value on what they pay for. So, and my time is valuable, my service. So that's where, like, you've got to realize that, because if you gave, how many times have you offered something for free, and then, or like, here, I'm gonna give you a free natal reading, and then they'll blow you off, or they don't take it seriously, and it's like,
oh, every time. No,
yeah,
every time.
And so it's like, it's people in this society value what they pay for.
Well, and I think, look, you go to get your hair done, right? Like, I have a friend who's a very like kind of like hairdresser to the stars, right?
Yeah.
And I've had my haircut by him, and I've watched him give hair, and it's a spiritual experience, right? Like when you go to get your hair done, just not just him, but just in general, you want to leave there feeling great, right? Like, and so part of it, I mean, your hair could look crazy, but the person's like, Ryan, you just, like, wow, like you're so like handsome, and wow, like I just feel like you look different and your energy. So, and you just walk out of there and you're just like, boom, I feel great. And that's a spiritual experience, but you didn't come there. You're not like, I'm going to pay for the spirituality. You're paying for the haircut.
That is such a huge takeaway.
See, this is a massive takeaway. Like that is like more than what I even bargained for. And honestly, so dope. Love that. Thank you for that. How do you handle, I guess, people who are faulty practitioners? Like somebody's gonna slip through the cracks at some point, right? Or like give bad readings, or maybe not end up being qualified. Like and you can tell really quickly. Like in the TikTok era, you can watch anybody at any time, 16-year-olds charging for readings on a live stream on TikTok. They're like, here's my tarot deck, and they're like showing the card, and they're like, this is what it means, and they're answering these questions that are very like specific and to vulnerable people. And you're like, that's not what that card means. That's not what that means, like at all. You don't know what you're talking about. You can tell the difference, I think, often. How do you handle that? Because they give us a really bad name. Like that is kind of plaguing us at the moment.
Well, I mean, look, I think, go back to the haircuts. I mean, if it's a bad haircut and you don't like it, you're just not coming back, right? And but there's plenty of people who love bad haircuts, right? You know what I mean? It's like, so you're like, gosh, you paid for that. I mean,
no, it's so right. Like
there are plenty of people who love bad haircuts. So a good haircut to you is a bad. That's so brilliant. That's such a. I mean,
it's such a well, yeah. I think that's true, because there are probably just people like even on TikTok who it's like, well, I just actually like spending time with this person on a live stream, right? And so they're just, even if the advice isn't applicable, or if people in the chat are calling them out and saying that's not what that card means, you don't know what you're talking about, there are plenty of people who are probably going to overlook that, because what they're receiving, the value of it, right, is maybe not the accuracy of like, oh, I know what this card means.
I mean, look, really everybody wants accuracy. It's like, like I've been doing this for a long time. I've had lots of people, really smart people come in, work in the company. They, they're like, they do their stuff. They're like, hey, everybody wants accuracy. And it's like, yeah, but like accuracy is really hard to sell, right? Because timelines, timelines are different. And, I think advisors are going to make predictions, and we're in the business of making predictions. Look, if you're a stockbroker, you're in the business of making predictions. If you're a weather person, if you're a pundit, you're a political pundit, you're making these predictions, and some of them are true and some of them aren't. I don't care how you could be the greatest predictor in any field, but I don't know that like that's ultimately. It's a little bit of entertainment, right? Like, so even if you're doing political predictions, or you're talking about, you're on CNBC, there's an entertainment factor to it. And then, I mean, like, give me solid advice, like give me really solid advice that I can use in my daily life. And, I'll be happy. I'm going to feel like I got my money's worth, right? From what you did.
It's just about, I mean, like what I love about you and your energy is just like, bringing it back down to the ground.
Yeah. And look, customers will get mad, they'll say, hey, this person made these predictions, they didn't come true. We'll investigate it. I mean, we will look at every single thing. And just like you have in any business, I mean, like you've got like, you could be running a diner and you've got some of the waitresses or waiters, they're giving away free meals, or they're, you've got like kitchen staff stealing, all those problems. But you don't want to focus on the problems, right? Like you want to focus on the business, run the business to the best of your ability. As problems come up, try to solve them. But, you're never going to not be trying to solve problems.
Do you feel like, I mean, you just see the actual population of people who are investing in this stuff. None of my friends are into this stuff. They don't buy readings, they don't see psychics or anything like this. But these are all people who like have their gym membership, right? Or they're going to go get their hair cut or whatever. But now, see, now I need to like figure out how I want to say this question because I'm still thinking in this spiritual perspective. Why do you think people are not, I guess, investing in their, for lack of a better term, spiritual growth? Like, like a more like a higher meaning in something. For me, astrology really is kind of spiritual.
Yeah, that's how you do it. You're bringing your spirituality to, you know, your to people, right? In general, right? Like your connection with Megan, I'm sure you guys are connecting on this level, and I do too. Look, I try to bring like my spiritual, like what I see that as my part of my life, I try to bring that into my relationships with people. But you know, that's not my business. That's how I, you know, whether it's like, that's how I try to approach everything. Right. And I would imagine, Ryan, you're approaching everything from that point of view, whether it's business, friendship, you know, whether you're going into the supermarket and you wind up interacting with someone, you're trying to bring that part of yourself into your life.
Totally. I think, okay, so this is so interesting to me. This is so, I think the way I want to put it or ask it to you is like, what do you, I guess, what do you say to the skeptics? That's kind of it, because I do feel like it's a skepticism thing that is by far and large, at least the people I know, making them not like consult a psychic for something or to care to consult the stars. But I find that interesting because it's only in the last 100 years that therapy has grown to be this like thing. I all for therapy, but these are my friends all have therapists, you know, but I'm like, okay, well, therapy was literally like what we know of it. You can track it back. It started as astrology. So like how we wouldn't have modern talk therapy without astrology. So like how did therapy just like brand itself so heavily in the fabric of society that everybody now needs a therapist, but not everybody needs an astrologer or a psychic?
I mean, look,
Wow.
I did a lot of therapy. So I can just give you my point of view. Like I did a lot of therapy. There was a point in my life where, you know, I went to therapy sometimes a couple of times a week, you know, for a decade of my life. Right. And it really helped me. And so I brought a lot of that baggage into my perspective on like what we do. And so I had like my skepticism came from, well, look, you know, you're telling me that you're going to have this, you know, phone call or this chat and it's, you know, you're going to instantly feel better or you're going to solve the problem. And I'll tell you, I read a book called The Power of Now. My wife gave me that book when we first started dating, and I read it kind of, you know, tried to read it when she gave it to me, and you know, I later on read it, and I've done like body work and healing, and I've done a lot of stuff living in California and really being open to it. And what I found is, like, so therapy is like it's in your, you know, you're dealing with thoughts, and then like. When I started to do body, you know, kind of people helping me with my body, they're like, well, it's first in your body, then it's in your mind, right? Like you know, it's first kind of, you feel it in your body. And then I started to see that like, well, we're working on demand, right? Like I've gone and I thought like, hey, could how we do business, could it work for therapy? And therapists, they don't want to work after 5 o'clock, you know, and they want to work in like this certain way. And, you know, people working in our business, like they'll talk to you whenever. And so there's a lot of benefit I see in, okay, I'll talk to you, you know, like, Ryan, can I talk to you right now? And it's like, I talk to you right now, Ryan, and then you help me. And then I don't create like all this extra wreckage in my life, right? Because I talked to you, you know, you gave me some insight, I worked it out. And then I don't like, just like wreck things for 5 more days before, right? Before I now go to therapy, right? And so it's like, I've got this whole pile of crap that happened. So it just works differently, I think, than therapy.
It does. Like the application of it, yeah, because that was also one of the issues I had, I guess, with therapy.
I love the term of wreckage, though. Like your people are able to like stop the wreckage, like stop the flipping of, you know, the proverbial car, like get it under control before you do something more catastrophic, and just, because shame just is such a reactionary emotion. So the fact that your practitioners can be like, slow your roll, homie, like,
Yeah, not
like
the
take
moment.
a breather. That's amazing. So
And look,
That is so
I think
amazing.
if I think the thing is if so when you talk about, well, why is it not more pervasive? And well, I think we all have different ways to, like a lot of people have close people that they can call and talk to and kind of get the advice that they want to get. They might have they might be able to go on a long run or go to a yoga class, or I think there are multiple different ways to kind of deal with things and get perspective. And this is just one of them. So I don't know. I think for therapy, it just, the pandemic hugely made, therapy grow. And uh, and I think we wound up having to sit in our problems, and a lot of those ways that we dealt with our problems, right, were taken away from us. So I'm not sure. I think over time, more people will see this, but we did some different studies. We've actually done research, and again, a lot of people use other things. So a lot of our customers aren't necessarily using yoga, aren't necessarily, they're maybe not as big a readers, they don't have as many other outlets besides talking to the psychic is a more higher up on a priority list. And the other thing we found is that they usually would have been exposed to this at some point earlier in their life, like maybe they had an aunt who read tarot cards or things like that. If you're skeptical, it's going to be very difficult for anyone but a personal relationship,
to change your mind.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
So how do you see the future of your business and industry evolving in the years to come? Because you said, you've done some great things. You've also, missed the mark, you said, on a few things. So what is your prediction?
Yeah, and you've got a beta program going. You got.
Well, look, I think that what we're trying to do with Hipsy, you talked about people on TikTok doing live readings. That's so the first part of this which we've tested, and we've been testing it, really in the last few weeks, is, it allows you to then, when you're doing a live, have the people ask questions. They could do it ahead of time or in real time, give you a payment, and then you can kind of see the question and see that you've been paid for that question, and then just answer that question during your live. And I think that's a really big part of the industry potentially growing, because it's like a product demo, right? It's like, hey, here's what I can do. And so we see that has the potential to really grow the world. And then, can we participate in that in a different way? That's one of the things I still think, and we've been trying for a while. I still think it's about the independence, that there's a lot of growth there. You, Ryan, being out there, people talking to you, people listening to this podcast, that's going to grow our business. It's not necessarily, it's just more people are looking, and some people will want, some people want Domino's pizza. Some people are going to want to go to their local pizza parlor.
I'm really fascinated. I've gotten some really freaking good takeaways from it.
I was trying to say, we're going to have some conversations. I've been seeing little light bulbs go off behind Ryan's head.
It's funny.
This whole time.
Yeah, I notice when I get on TikTok, which honestly isn't that often anymore, I should, but when I do a live stream and I'm just talking, I'll sometimes just do random little free readings for people. I'll always get a booking, actual, legit, good, full service thing. But it's making me think about restructuring my calendar, but you're providing the tech.
We had this woman, she did she only had, I think at the most at any time, 40 people on her live. This was on Instagram, and she did $450 in 2 hours. It was 20 readings, and then there were 50 more people who wanted to have a reading with her who couldn't, and so we want to help. We think that's a really viable model, and we really want to help independent psychics grow their business, and that's really, that's what that's all about. It's Hipsy, it's HYP It's in a beta. So like if you were to go there now, you can sign up to, once we go live to more than just the few people we're testing with right now, you can be part of it. And it's inexpensive. Like I think we're charging about 10%, but we do the billing. So, we take we're doing the credit card payment. We're managing if someone tries to charge it back, customer service, all of that. And then all of your tools are going to come out of this platform.
I think that is so important because right now, like with TikTok, it's impossible. It's very hard. You gotta like make sure, okay, yeah, my Venmo's in my bio, and it's just as unprofessional. Right. Like I don't like it at all. But I would love if I could just structure my own calendar to be like, yeah, right, like today from these hours to these hours, I'm just gonna be live streaming and making money that way, like literally in real time, which also serves as a generator for all of my other services that I offer. That has been my problem, this live thing lately, but you're kind of making it more commercialized, I guess.
The people who are using it are excited. And I think, and then it gives you then a way to capture those customers. And then look, ultimately we have found the pay per minute model, which is what we do, as the best way to do this, right? It's clearly minute by minute. The customer is getting value out of the reading. And if not, they just end the call or they end the chat. Yeah. And so we want to give that to independents and let them grow their business.
Well, this has been so just enlightening on so many aspects. Yeah. And so we both want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about your business model, your opinion, your perspectives, because like I said, you've given us a lot to think about. In so many different contexts.
Resonates so much with our industry, but you're a very different type of guest than we've had. You're not like an actual provider of like a crazy service. You're not reading our past lives. So I really appreciate this perspective very much. Yeah. Makes us better at what we do. This has been lovely.
Thank you, Ryan and Megan. And if there's any way that I can be helpful to you guys in the future, definitely reach out. And I learn a lot from every conversation, and I learned a lot from this conversation. I mean, it's interesting to talk to other people and test out your thoughts and see what they, hey, that's good, I get that, or that's not good. That's how you keep getting better.
And I think a huge takeaway is, guys, if you're curious, like if you grew up in the Miss Cleo age, give it a whirl. I mean, hop on the website, get in the chat. Like, what's the best that could happen? So thank you for what you do and your time. And I think I'm going to check it out. And you might have a new practitioner.
I know. It's cool. We'll put the website in the show notes. Is there anywhere else you would like us to direct people?
I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. I think that's the easiest way to get me. If you're interested, just reach out to me.
Excellent. Love it. Thank you so much for making yourself accessible.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ryan, Megan. Hope you have a great day and keep spreading your spirituality, because I feel it and I think, the world needs more of it.
Oh my God.
We're trying.
Okay. Thank you, listeners. Bye.
Bye.